Today, Sunday, March 25th, Block Digest is bringing you the power inside of Bitcoin at block height 515,125. Today with Mr. Rick.
What's up, brother?
Got JW in the lineup today. Come on, let that power out, JW.
Oh my God. Kill me. Kill me now.
Janine, are you amped up with the power inside of Bitcoin?
I mean, I should have thought of a German thing to say because that would sound metal, but no, I don't have anything prepared.
Come on, Ak. Is the power inside of you?
Oh, what's
You just got cut off.
His power was so big it cut out his mic.
Okay, well, it's not on the show notes, but we have to go into the Satoshi's Vision conference a bit before we get to the stuff underneath this.
Yeah, man. I gotta say,
You mean
I got in late last
Satoshi's
night.
lack of vision? We have to address the lack of vision.
Yeah.
Honestly, if somebody has the entrance clip of CSW, like you got to see like the visual of everybody clapping. It is so freaking cult-like. It is just unreal.
It's the syncing thing. Like if it was a normal applause, yeah, then that would be a good thing. But I did. I went to a meetup last night, so I caught the tail end of it a little intoxicated, but I was still able to decipher that it was pretty ridiculous. The whole first question is answer response was, I don't give a shit. So I don't know. That's like a pretty I don't know. It's a pretty hard stance to take on all this stuff. It's just, I don't know. He's such an aloof. It's always a funny thing to watch.
Yeah, seriously, nothing's going to describe what we're dealing with better than that clip. You should totally play it. Janine just threw it in the box. Like if you can't just feel like the cult's weird awkwardness, right? It's like, it's so bad.
Yeah. Hold on. My clipboard's.
All right. So as he's bringing it up, just notice how many people like don't want to clap in sequence. All right, here we go. Oh, we have no audio. So this guy's like, he's in the front and he's making everybody clap in sequence. He's looking at him like, you got to clap. And people are awkwardly agreeing to clap in sequence. And then CSW comes in the back of the room and literally runs down. And
like he's at the Royal Rumble, he's about to jump in the ring.
Oh my gosh, that's so bad.
wow?
No, it's a scam.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna come up and do like a hey.
It really is like a really bad sort of televangelist thing going on. That's pretty much what we're looking at.
Yeah, and I don't know. The thing that really kind of bugs me about it, the whole thing is like we were saying, it's just so easy to veer people off in the woods of what we're discussing here. And it just seems like that happens so much in these presentations with Craig.
And
yeah, and
sorry.
I also want to point out, what?
I said if I start, I'm going to ramble for a bit, so go ahead.
Yeah, I also just want to point out if anyone in the audience hasn't watched our last episode, we showed a tweet from him, Craig Wright, Fake Satoshi, last week, where he said that there is no cryptography in Bitcoin. This is the man who is, the star attraction of this event.
Yep. But oh my God, like the level of nonsense at this conference. Okay, Eamon Gunsire is going to do fiber networks for blockchains as a business. I don't know how he's going to do it as a business because right now the fiber network that the Bitcoin network depends on is literally being supported at a loss. So how he's going to come in with something being operated at a loss and somehow monetize it and turn it into a business, I have no idea. And I don't think he does either. Craig's presentation was just complete and utter lunacy. Like he literally said, in order to stop double spends, they're going to connect into merchant security cameras and catch video of you trying to double spend and sign it cryptographically and then hand it over to the police. I mean, Roger pretty much accused Blockstream and Bitcoin Core of being government agents to like trying to disrupt Bitcoin. Like his words were like, I'm not saying that they're government agents attempting to disrupt Bitcoin, but if you think about it, they're doing exactly what you would do if they were. like this whole thing was just a nut show.
That double spin, I didn't hear him talk about it other than like that was the question. I think that he said that he didn't give a crap about. It was just like was the whole question about a double spin problem, and he was just like, yeah, I don't give a shit. It's just like what like in this whole system like supposed to solve one of that major problem.
Yeah, I mean, hasn't this been a talking point for a year or two at this point? Like 2-3 years now? Like, wow.
It's another thing. There were 2 separate presentations looking at the success rates of zero comp double spends. And hey, guess what? They happened. They happened at sometime on the range of like, up to 20% of the time, despite everybody out there saying it's impossible to double spend. It's totally safe to use. And the question Rick is referring to is Pierre Resume, of all people, asked Craig how a miner would even know which transaction was a double spend if you could convince them not to mine double spends. And to that, Craig went, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, that's like just such a brash way of like being a human being. And I mean, like you're supposed to be Satoshi, which like came up with this really novel system. And, like, I don't know. To me, it's like he just is such a, I don't know. He's such a goof. I mean, like he really is. Like he started talking about hooker coin at one point. I just like, at certain points, I'm like, I don't take this guy seriously. It's just unfortunate that we have new rounds of people that get that wording of like, well, this is Satoshi, and they start taking him seriously, and then he runs off in the woods like this with them.
Yeah, his argument with the hooker coin thing, he's like his example was if there was hooker coin and it was more private than Bitcoin, that nobody would use hooker coin because it was called hooker coin. Like, and that is just like so disconnected from reality. If there was a token out there that was just as like useful, just as valuable, like just as widely accepted as Bitcoin, except it was called hooker coin and it was more private, and Bitcoin wasn't private, yeah, people are probably going to be using hooker coin. Nobody who cares about their privacy is going to give a shit what the coin is called.
And maybe it's a coin for fishing enthusiasts. They'll get confused and think it's for fishermen.
Right. It's the angler coin, hooker coin. We got to make that differentiation there.
Or Captain Hook. It's like coin for pirates.
Coin for Peter Pan.
Seriously, though, who would have possibly imagined that we would be here? Right, like a new thing is invented, a database that's like totally trustworthy, that doesn't have any third parties that you have to rely on, and now we have CSW running around getting everybody to clap. The universe is very strange.
Well, what I'm worried about is, he claims that he writes between 5 to 8 papers a week. So him taking a whole day out for this conference, it's like we've lost an entire paper.
That's another thing. In this conference, he has claimed that he has terabytes of analytical data of the functioning of the Bitcoin network and a bunch of math papers about all the nonsense buzzwords he's using. He has been saying that for almost a year. Like he has been saying that since the future of Bitcoin, that he has this data and he's going to release it soon for companies to look at, that he has all these math papers coming out. Where are they? Because he's been promising them for a year.
Like somebody did ask the question, like, where did he come up with the idea of the 21 million cap? And he kind of just got lost in a ramble about alcohol. That's where you come up with great ideas. So yeah, those math sheets, we might take a while before we get the paperwork in on that. If he's just, alcohol is the way you get ideas, Satoshi.
I mean, he's been churning out those analytics on that Tulip supercomputer, right? That's you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, out of this entire conference, and I watched most of it, the only talks that were not just a complete laughingstock was Eric Voskuhl going over the functionality of Libitcoin, which is like, I actually think that, you know, everybody should go watch that presentation. It is a very thorough breakdown of the library architecture and node implementation. And it's actually more functional in terms of like speed than core right now. So as far as like people building you know, backend services that need to plug things on top of a node, like you should look into that. And kind of surprisingly, I'm sorry I forget her name right now, but that woman who's usually talking with Daniel Kraywitz on his channels, you know, her talk was actually not that bad. It's kind of like a anthropological breakdown of the difference in mentality between investors, traders, and gamblers. And, you know, that's aside from that, like the conference was the funniest thing in the world. It was just nonsense after nonsense.
Yeah, man, I really I got back and caught the tail end of it and was just like, man, I wish I could have caught more of this, because I bet there was some comedy gold in there and maybe one or two smart people. So I'm going to go back and check that out.
Yeah, my greatest comfort was seeing some of the clips of the audience when they had a chance to speak, and it's like a really bad like startup meetup where everybody is there to just pitch their startup idea. They have nothing, but they're just trying to get developers to work on it for free. And it's like their first or second year sort of in the space. They're like some junior employee at some software company, and now they're going to be the CEO in some startup, and they're pitching their thing. It was totally that feel. So my comfort was most of the people attending are scammers themselves. So it's just like this big scammer, you know, cesspool. I don't know how many like actual good people are going to get stuck by it.
There it is.
Talk, Craig. You said miners would orphan blocks with fraudulent double spends in the context of unconfirmed transactions.
Yes.
I agree that would be nice, but my question is, are you saying that miners would do that now, or that we can make that possible in the future by making changes? And two, in such a case, how do the miners know for sure which of the two transactions is a legitimate one?
I don't give a shit.
That's it.
I mean, like, what the fuck? Like a critical question to solve the problem that is impeding, like, actually using zero conf in the secure way they claim you could. And what's air quotes Satoshi's response? I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like such a reasonable question to ask someone who is supposedly Satoshi. So, like, for him to respond like that and everything in the whole speech itself, yeah, it's a brash human being right there.
Yeah. So, Rick, you said it was definitely the Peter Rizun guy.
Yeah, that's what Shinobi was saying.
Asking.
That was Cookie Monster.
Yeah. So that if anyone's not familiar with who that is, if you look his name up on Twitter, Peter Rizun, he's made comments in the past that core should be euthanized, that the main Bitcoin blockchain has a genetic disease or something. He uses all of this eugenics language, and it's really creepy. So for him to be the reasonable person in the room is really scary.
Yeah, just a small glimpse of the story over there. It's just like, yeah, I need to go back and watch a little bit more of it. But yeah, it was definitely one of those conferences where, I don't know, just sort of sit back and watch, and it's a good thing to talk about. Gives us a couple of laughs.
And I mean, you know, this is just heavy speculation on my part, but like, it's sitting in the chat box. Like, I am entirely convinced that like half of the people in the chat box on YouTube were just sock puppets. I mean, like, all of them were just like in concert, like, wow, such amazing stuff. Like everybody using exclamation points to exaggerate things. Like it was literally like one person would say something and they would all just instantly start riffing off of it using the exact same buzz phrase or keyword. Like it just felt so ridiculously artificial. And I really hope Roger doesn't find out, because I think someone will lose a job. There was lots and lots of censorship in that troll box on YouTube. Like so much censorship.
Yeah, I mean, like I could only imagine, but I definitely think that troll box would probably have a sock puppet or two in there to kind of reconfirm what people are saying, just so people that aren't even in the room, like we're saying, that just sort of come into the stream and are watching saying, this is Satoshi, right? They do see that contention there still in the chat. So I don't know. Hopefully not that many people are still buying this argument now that it's been like a couple of years since he hasn't been able to cryptographically prove anything. So, yeah, hopefully we can stop talking about him being Satoshi, but he says he's going to be around for another 30 years. So it's going to be a long argument.
Yeah, it's I don't think like the people who support Bitcoin Cash like have any idea how any of these systems work. I mean, I forget his name. I think Veramol or something. The guy who published the terabyte block paper is like claiming that it would cost $25,000 to run a terabyte block node. And I mean, for anybody who's actually read Jameson Lopp's breakdown on serving SPV users, it's if you just Google Jameson Lopp CoinDesk SPV, he has the article published. He only projected out to like 8 gigabytes. And when you take into account the level of redundancy you have to have for like no data loss to be able to concurrently access information to serve SPV users, you are talking hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars just in storage at like 8 gigabytes. Like those cost at terabytes. The idea that you can set that up for $25,000 is outright delusional. And these people just bought it. Like there was somebody in the troll box who literally thought that if a miner mined a double spend, you could just blacklist them as a miner. Like you will somehow be able to find out for all time that it was that miner who mined the double spend if they mine a block in the future. Like you can just like, ooh, click, this miner can't mine anymore. like most of these people literally have no clue how any of this system works. Like the only reason we can identify miners right now is they choose to put a message in the Coinbase identifying the pool they come from. You just stop doing that. You have no clue who's mining what block. You can't blacklist anybody. You can't ban a miner. You can just orphan an individual block. Like it was seriously like I was in the Twilight Zone all weekend when I was watching them.
Unfortunate, but you're the rarity out there, man. Like there's a few of us and like our viewers here, and I'm sure like a lot of us on the Twitter space and stuff, we get our laughs about it. But yeah, some people are really buying this stuff. So that's where it is kind of like the laughs kind of become upsetting at some point. But like I don't know, like he's saying, if he's around for this much longer talking all this crap, we kind of gotta take it with a grain of salt if we're gonna be fighting it for this long.
And I mean, to get my last rant out of my system about this, and then I'll bow out or we can move on, whatever after. But like when they look at the terabyte block figure, they calculate from that would give every person on the planet 50 transactions a day. Okay, like on the blockchain. Now they also presented a ridiculous idea of literally pretty much using the blockchain as an emulator to build a computer on top of it and perform general purpose computations, which would explode the use of block space. They're not thinking about machine to machine payments. They're not thinking about micro payments on the internet. There was also a presentation about putting like train tickets on the blockchain. So let's sit back and realize that at a terabyte, and it would cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to run a node just in the gigabyte level. A terabyte block is only 50 transactions a person per day. Now you look at all the train tickets, all the gift cards, all the Chuck E. Cheese tokens, all the idiots running these ridiculous, air quote, Turing complete computers on top of Bitcoin. You look at the micro payments, you look at the machine to machine payments. Like, this is not workable. Like, this cannot work. And the fact that these people are just looking at all of these things, like, you can cram all of this into a blockchain and it somehow still works. It can still scale. It can still even be able to serve SPV users. It's fucking delusional. I mean, like,
yeah, it's really, really dumb. I mean, not all of that's true. And you also would have massive centralization if you had that much data, because just the speed of light is only so fast. The cables are only so thick. There's only so many electrons you can push through them at a time, and or beams of light, you know, if you're doing fiber. But yeah, at the end of the day, there's just some like limitations that the universe offers us that won't allow for terabyte, you know, blocks. So it's really, really stupid. And I'm kind of glad that at least the people that are getting suckered by these guys have to be just some real arrogant pricks, right? Like, if you're going to invest in something that CSW is pitching you without like asking your nephew that has, you know, some knowledge in computer science or something, or, you know, gosh, the arrogance that people have to think they can just come in and like pick a winner and then dump their money into it. Like, you know, go for it. I know that it's been ingrained. I know that like diversification, and they've suffered so many decades of government education that's made them stupid, but all that's true. But at the end of the day, you are what you are. And if you're that stupid, I need you to become less influential in the world as fast as possible. And I think CSW is the perfect medium for that. Like he's as important maybe as Satoshi. Like we really need that son of a bitch to just impoverish anybody dumb enough to listen to him as fast as possible.
So hardcore, man.
Well, more broadly, I think it's kind of become clear that the whole like big blocker versus small blocker dichotomy is kind of stupid. I think it would be more accurate to say this is a data compression versus, let's say, enlargement. The data compression versus space expansion or enlargement groups. I think that's a better way to distinguish it, because so far it's mostly been defined by the people who want bigger blocks. They say, if you don't want bigger blocks, that means you want small blocks or smaller blocks. But actually, what most of the so-called small block people want is data compression. They want to make the data smaller.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, that's like, that's another straw man. I know I said I was going to shut up. I can't help myself. But another straw man that was being consistently presented like at this conference regarding like the Bitcoiners' point of view, that we're just trying to make something that's like a stock that you just invest in. And I mean, it's the most insane straw man in the world. Like, both of us, unless literally everybody in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem is doing nothing but trying to scam people out of their money. And there's some in the ecosystem that have that as a goal, but not all of them. But ignoring the scammers, both of us as groups are trying to build money. The differences are in how to technologically approach facilitating transactional throughput. And they consistently feel this need to just lie and falsely frame the other group, for lack of a better words, point of view, as we're just making a stock that people invest in. And I mean, it's the most nonsensical shit in the world. Like, let's put all like my views aside, like the shit talking I usually do. You want to try and facilitate throughput this way. We want to try and do it this way. Go at it. Have fun. But the minute you start actively lying about what the other group's intents are or plans are, like you've just lost all credibility, because you're not actually trying to bolster or lay out a roadmap for your way of facilitating transactional throughput. You're just lying and trying to smear shit. You're not pointing out a flaw in the technological approach. You're just falsely framing the entire attempt. I mean, it's like if there are any actual genuine people in that community, like step up, like actually approach things from here's what we're doing and building, not here's this lie about what they're doing. Like, you know, when I sit here and I shit talk Bitcoin Cash, I don't sit here and say that they're intentionally trying to build a one world fucking like Rothschild currency with a chip in everybody's hands. No, I point out why I think the technological route they're taking is ridiculous and not going to work. And when it comes to shit flung the other way, I never see that. I just see lies. I don't see critique. I see lies. And I mean, that goes to show how like strong their convictions are for their own path.
Yeah, it could probably sound like maybe we are getting aggressive on some of that stuff just because, like, I guess some of us do see that sort of natural centralization in the way it goes, and like Roger wanting to start a country and all that stuff. Like, it could sound like it to people just coming into space, but I think, yeah, for the most part, like the arguments is like definitely one-sided when it comes to technical arguments. So hopefully, you know, people are listening to that side of it.
Well, so far we've spent so much time talking about Craig Wright that I think he would consider all of us fans now.
Right. Let's move on and talk about some other great people in the space.
Real quick, screenshot to my haters. If you don't like me and still watch everything I do, bitch, you're a fan.
Oh man, we got to move on. We're a fan. We got to move on.
Wait. You have to scroll down to reply. Scroll down. Find crypto graffiti. It's got to be somewhere.
I hate.
Oh, come on. Where is it? Where is crypto graffiti?
Not prioritizing. There we go.
There we go.
So it's the same quote in like a teenage girl's room, a mess on the phone.
I thought this one was funny too from Calcom. Just orphan this bitch, and the clip of him flipping off the audience at the presentation.
Calcom's always out there giving us a laugh. Good job.
Oh man. Well, I guess I don't know. It's
let's just drop him. Let's not be a fan. Let's drop him.
Everybody else done plumbing the stupidity of the conference, right? Ready to actually move on to the news.
Yeah, I don't ever want to talk about Bcash again.
All righty then.
Bitch, please.
All right, story one up. This would not be a fitting season finale if we didn't mention Coinbase doing something stupid. So they're doing something stupid. They're in talks to buy Earn.com, formerly 21 Inc., which started as a mining company, then pivoted to a micropayments company, then pivoted to shilling scam coins and charging people money to send you an email. And why in the absolute hell would Coinbase sink money into this company? I mean,
this isn't a tremendous waste of money, not at all.
Like, this company is one of the biggest failures as far as startups in this space. Like, they could not mine successfully as a competitive business. When pivoting to a micropayments platform, they dropped that. They didn't contribute anything to Lightning Network. They didn't look into Lightning Network. They didn't consider Lightning Network in their business plans. They dropped that, and now it's an email box that charges people money to contact people and spams everybody with free shitcoin token airdrops that they do.
Yeah, honestly, I was looking at this and just thinking, like, it might be just like evident of like how hard it is to get real, like, somebody that knows what they're doing in the space and that's been experimenting for a while, and like maybe they're buying Earn.com just to get the people behind it into Coinbase. I don't know, because like you're saying, it doesn't make much sense other than kind of reminiscent of just Silicon Valley gobbling up anything in the sector that's sort of growing in any which direction, and sort of adapting it into their system and seeing how it could work. It's like the only thing I was thinking about it, because you're right. It's like Earn.com and the 21 computer, both have been kind of failures there on the end as far as like what exactly they were going for and what exactly the success or failure that was. It's just, yeah, it's something where it's kind of been left just hanging in the air. And I'm sure Coinbase, just like, they've been hiring people like crazy, supposedly. And so if they're looking for people, I just started to think, well, maybe they're just gobbling up these companies because they're the only people that they think have the proper intellect to handle whatever they're trying to work on.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me. But I mean, like, what kind of talent's even over there? Like, what do they hope to grab?
Like, why do you go talent hunting at a company that has failed to develop a single reliable business model, despite being one of like the older startups in this space? I mean, like, there's a reason that the mining computer is called the butt box now.
Yeah, I think that was Jen said, right?
Yeah, the thing I'm thinking is that it's really obvious this is a bad business model, right? It's going to be so easy to enable that. It wouldn't even surprise me that, we've got this like week of laps that Blockstream is putting out, and they're like every day is just like a business that sucks that we've been putting up with for way too long. And they've just built that app on Lightning, right? So like but gosh, what is that? Or Steam it, right? Like, it's so stupid. It's got to have its own token just to be able to sell content. Like, come on, that's really dumb business model. But I think one of the Lightning apps that Blockstream put out was, it's probably mostly just to help people understand the potential, but is a little app where you can pay to get access to the text-based content. So it wouldn't surprise me if in the next few days they release another app that allows you to respond to or to do the earn.com thing, right? Like pay people in order to respond to you or pay attention to you. So yeah, I think they're pretty screwed. So they might as well sell maybe a talent acquisition or whatever, because they obviously are completely mistiming the market.
Actually, JW, this might make you this might trigger you, but actually Steam has 3 different tokens, not just one. They have Steam dollars, and Steam power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no!
You got me. You guys are just depressed. I was already a little down today, and so far every story has just been a kick right in the crotch. So
we got the lap.
And then Janine brought it back up. I was done with that, and now I'm triggered again.
We got the lap coming up at some point.
How many tokens are involved in Ripple? Is there like 7 that I don't know about?
There's a fuck ton. Ripple can encode any token you want on it. There's no point for the Ripple token.
Stop it.
People are and Ethereum, as we see, that has more than the Ethereum token.
Oh God.
Oh Lord.
When ERC 205.
But yeah, it's like I really hope that this article is wrong in looking at Balaji coming on board to Coinbase, because I mean, if there's one person out there who is a worse choice to put in any influential position in Coinbase than Brian Armstrong, it's Balaji.
Oh, there will be extraordinary claims for months like on end if that's the case. Oh man.
Yeah, but it's like Coinbase, like just stop. Just stop.
Yeah, one last time for the season. Come on, Coinbase. Come on.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I guess move along to the next one.
Bisq. Use Bisq.
Yes.
Yeah. Good mention.
All right. Well, the SEC is sticking its nose further into things. It's not as bad as all the ICO subpoenas flying around, but they are going to be digging into hedge funds that are involved in cryptocurrencies over the next couple months to kind of see how they're handling things. Kind of get these hedge funds input for I guess, regulatory framework and how they're going to handle things. So yeah, I think that big money inflow might kind of stagnate for a little while because it's people aren't usually all gung-ho about something when regulators start sniffing around, even if it isn't in the tone of stop this immediately. It's that's still opening yourself up to unclear risks as far as how they're going to react after the fact. And two of the big things that they were going to do is kind of look at and make sure that what they're advertising to their shareholders as having been purchased is actually what they have possession of in terms of crypto assets, to make sure that like you don't have a hedge fund out there telling people they're investing in Bitcoin and then running around with the money like day trading shit coins to try to make extra money on the side. And then make sure that their kind of risk profiles and disclosures are accurate. So, I mean, yeah, it sucks. The regulators are sticking their nose in everything again. But, I mean, at least from how this article from the Wall Street Journal paints it, it seems to me like they just want to make sure that there's not really blatant fraud going on in any of these hedge funds. And, I mean, as long as that's all they do, I don't think that's anything to freak out about.
Yeah, I was looking at the story thinking that, it might just like, it's going to make these hedge funds make sure they're investing in stuff that, doesn't have that risk tied to it too much, like where we start to see maybe utility tokens being developed and that real 1% that it starts searching for in order to actually, I don't know, just like, get rid of some of these ICOs where it's just like, definitely 100% scam material. And so if it gets, it might limit the inflow to those things, but maybe it'll just like, it'll get more money into the things that are for sure. So I don't know, like it could have definite effect on Ethereum and all that. I don't know where these alts are going, but it's like, I feel like, it's pretty bearish for them, but overall for like the legitimate things, I think that's pretty good information that it's going to clear those sort of things up to where people are going in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be a net positive or not, but like for my own peace of mind, like my own selfish quality of life, if the regulators start coming down hard on these apps that can be come down upon by regulators, we'll have a lot less of this stupid stuff to talk about, right? We won't have Bcash running around. We won't have guys running down the aisle pumping up some coin that they have total control of. I think again, it might not be the best in the long run, but at least in the short term, my mental health will be better.
Yeah, I don't think Bcash is going anywhere because of regulators. I mean, I think there's a pretty clear-cut line at this point between like things that function more as commodities without any actual central issuer kind of holder of obligation versus things that are directly issued or obligations held by like identifiable groups or individuals. And sadly, I don't think Bcash quite makes the cut for being defined as the latter.
No, I don't think they do either. Although there is, you could argue that there's like two guys that are in control of it. I think pretty effectively that it's not like Bitcoin, but it's an ecosystem of scammers, right? There's like this whole, symbiosis between these shady ICOs. Like, look at all the people that showed up to that conference. It wasn't people that were necessarily selling an altcoin.
Well, I mean, the water's been flowing long enough, it's carving the rocks out slowly but surely, and underneath we can see that there's a path and there's a way forward.
And JW, I mean, there is a section where the host actually went around asking people why they were there and what they were doing, and almost none of them had any answer related to Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash. It was all blockchain this, blockchain that, token this. Like
totally, we're gonna put pet food on the blockchain so that nobody can steal your doggy's kibbles. Yeah, it's totally. I mean, once the sort of, I mean, I hate it, right? Like I hate that we are all so stupid and we've checked our brains out, and so we really need to be protected like children. But that's the state of things. So once daddy comes in, right, once the government gets a little bit more involved, I think there will be a lot fewer of these scams being pushed as aggressively. There'll still probably be like a few big ones, right? Like we'll still have Ripple. Whoever pays off the regulators effectively is still going to be able to shill their garbage, but it's going to be a lot fewer people. There's going to be a lot less like just constant competition. So we'll be able to like address maybe Ethereum and Ripple. I don't even know if Bcash could make that cut. I think they might be too broke for that. But yeah, you know, they won't eliminate all of them, but I think it will eliminate quite a few of them, and quite a few of the ones that are providing funding and liquidity and just like constant advertising for all the stupid money.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really going to be a while before that stuff starts burning itself out, JW. Because I mean, like you can go after like people directly issuing a token or like raising money through an ICO, but I mean, I think it's going to be a lot harder to kind of justify going after something like Bcash or, you know, like Litecoin or anything that is like Bitcoin, where you just kind of throw the software out there and then there is no identifiable issuer, there is no identifiable operator. Like it's,
dude, all they would have to do is start enforcing the Howey rule, because if you're out actively promoting a security, right, like an investment opportunity, let's not even call it a security, they could, if they wanted to. I mean, that's pretty flexible. They could absolutely apply that to you. And because what happens in most of these cases is selective enforcement anyway. If they decided that they wanted to enforce upon CSW or Roger Ver, they would absolutely do it. So it really is just like a matter of like political will. I think there's not enough will, or there hasn't been, and it's moved slowly. But with all the SEC going after those ICOs, I would be pretty nervous if I was Roger Ver or freaking Satoshi Light. What's his name? Charlie Lee. I mean, I wouldn't be sleeping well, but maybe those guys are. And you're right. I don't think it's going to happen like in the next 2 months. I think that it's going to be a slow process, but I still think, you know, maybe in a year or two, those guys will be having a hard time. Even Vitalik, I could see him having a really hard time, because he has promoted the hell out of that. There was a token sale, an ICO. It is centralized, right? Like he's proved time and time again that it's nothing but a database. If I was a regulator, I'd be all over his ass, because there's a lot of money to take there and a lot of good, legitimate arguments that it should be taken. So I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know what happened with the SEC's budget, but I heard that the CFTC's budget was actually reduced this year. So, yeah, you know,
all the more reason to go cash in.
Maybe that's what we're starting to see. Maybe they have some Bitcoin they're hodling onto, where their budget isn't. They might have been cut, but it's like making up for it somewhere else. I don't know. It's some behind the scenes stuff going on.
I mean, I just don't see it happening, JW, because once you step across that line, like everything is a security. If you look at like, you know, just semantical twisting, and I mean, at that point, like they would start going after everything. And I mean,
how is e-gold different than Ethereum in your mind, or Bcash?
No, I mean like things like because Bcash is like, there is no like central point of issuance. There is no
let's talk
out there who is going, I am issuing this as an obligation to redeem it. Like there is just an asset floating out there. And I mean, even with Ethereum, I don't see this really happening at this point, because like too much time has gone on past the initial offering and the pre-sale. Like I really, like even in Ethereum's case, I think like there is the potential for Vitalik to say something and people go no. And I mean, when you start looking at the fact that there is no central point of obligation to redeem anything, I do not think that jurisdictions will just start selectively declaring things that kind of fall in that category securities, unless they're going to go after everything. Like I don't think they're going to play selective enforcement there.
I don't know, man. I mean, they play selective enforcement.
And security.
You do realize they play selective enforcement with like drug trafficking, right? If they'll play selective enforcement there, I don't know why they wouldn't here. But yeah, I don't know, man. We'll see how it plays out.
The name of the game, right? Risk mitigation. Or so the story goes.
Yeah, I think risk mitigation is marketing for grabbing stuff we likes.
Like, JW, like things like drug trafficking, that is so much more nuanced than just they don't like this guy, so they go after him. Like that goes into like tactical intelligence gathering, being able to gather information. Like there's a whole slew of reasons why they won't go after somebody in a case of something like drug trafficking, not just where we don't like this guy. Like there's an actual tactical thought process behind that.
I didn't say there wasn't. I just said it's selective. I said that they pick and choose who they go after. They don't enforce the law uniformly the way that a lot of people think it works. And so I have no reason to think they wouldn't not uniformly apply the law in cases of securities. And as far as the timeline goes, I mean, I think 3 or 4 years might be typical between executing a scam and the SEC showing up at your door. It's not like 6 months, man. So I don't see any reason to think that the clock is ticked too long. But you know, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out.
Janine?
Just kind of froze. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Have you guys seen the movie Sicario?
No, I missed that one.
Because that's all about how the government cooperates with certain drug cartels in order to get rid of other ones.
Oh yeah, it's very apparent. Like, I mean, like what it was mid-2000s, some point in time where it was like used to be the Gulf Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel. Now it's just the Sinaloa Cartel and the Gulf Cartel is barely non-existent. It's definitely a pick-a-winner situation.
Yeah. Because what the government prefers in terms of like law enforcement with drugs is they prefer for there to be one cartel that they can kind of manage, that doesn't get too out of hand, and they know roughly where the group is organized. If you have a bunch of them operating at once, like you're dealing with a lot more people, you're not able to crush them as easily when you absolutely need to. Like they do not like having multiple ones. They like having one really big one so that they can like work with them.
But yeah, it's also like inefficient for their operations if they are working with Sinaloa and then all of a sudden the Gulf Cartel is powerful enough to knock out their trade routes. So yeah, it was pretty obvious, like apparent that like that was one of those. I mean, like even with the Fast and Furious, you know, we saw that they were handing weapons over to the Sinaloa Cartel. And I mean, like the Gulf Cartel kind of disappeared. And like, I mean, we know that the CIA has been playing these games for decades. So why wouldn't they play that right below our border where there's a lot of economic incentive to do so with all these cowboys in the system? I don't know. To me, it's like, yeah, I remember that movie now that you're saying it, Cicero. Like it was like I wanted to catch it, but it was one of those things where it's like, you know, it's going on to the extent of like, I don't even want to watch a drama about it because it's so depressing that that's just the way it is.
Yeah, the way I look at it is basically there's a tax involved in some of these illegal activities. Like if you want to sell alcohol, you can either pay the tax like, you know, above the table, or you can pay the tax under the table, right? You can, when you get caught occasionally, you can grease the right wheels, you can have the right relationships with law enforcement, or you can just flat out just pay the fines and penalties and, you know, do your time, right? It's another business expense. And if the taxes become so high, like on something like alcohol, I think it's maybe 150% or something ridiculous. But if it was 1,000%, the amount of jail time that people have to do and the fines and the confiscation remains the same, you know, you're going to see a lot more illegal alcohol traffic, right? So it really is just a tax with a different name. You call it a fine instead of a tax, right? And with all this, all the stuff that's happening in the space right now, they really haven't started taxing it yet. It's been kind of small and weird, and it's new, and they never jump on stuff like that right away. They wait for it to develop and see what's going on. You know, they're not exactly the most innovative and creative folks around. But once there's a nice big pile of money, they start taking their tax. And I really think that they're going to start taking their tax from everybody that can be taxed. And that's everybody like Vitalik that is a throat that can be grabbed, or like Charlie Lee that's a throat that can be grabbed, or the Ripple guys. I mean, I think they paid a fine already, right? So I think like I don't think I'm proposing anything crazy here. I'm just saying that they're going to start getting hit with those taxes. And I think because that's a significant expense in this sort of stuff, right, that in one way or another is trying to replace government monopolies, that tax tends to be a pretty significant expense. So most of these guys aren't going to be able to afford to pay it, and there'll just be a lot fewer of them that we have to deal with.
Yeah, I can understand that point. Like, I think we recently saw the SEC like there was some House committee hearing where the needle was threaded to make sure not to call Ethereum a security, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with a under the table tax.
And that's kind of my point, is like, they've drawn this line between like a commodity and what they consider a security. And it seems very clear at this point, looking at all the congressional hearings, like what lobbyists or other experts testifying have said, that they're very much pushing Ethereum on the commodity side of that line. And I feel like unless regulators start completely rethinking how they've drawn that line fundamentally, like I don't see things moving to one side or the other. And once they start really fundamentally rethinking that line, I think that is something that everything in this space is going to have to worry about.
Except for Bitcoin, because there's no throat to choke. And it'll just make it more and more obvious that there was a reason that this was done anonymously, and it needs to be distributed. And eventually everybody's going to wake up and go, oh, like government resistant. That's actually kind of important for this.
Don't worry, guys. Crypto Daddy will protect us.
Oh, yeah.
As long as he's wearing his leathers.
All right. So I want to slide along to the next thing from Mr. Nick Szabo.
Oh, yeah. Interesting stuff here.
Yeah, so I think he made a tweet on March 8th, I believe, where he was responding to a paper that the Federal Reserve published that was supposed to be some kind of educational thing about Bitcoin. And one of the lines that he disputed was that the Federal Reserve claimed that traditionally currency is produced by a nation's government. First of all, that's very interesting because even the idea of a nation state has only existed for several hundred years. Like, it's not really a current. It's a very current concept. It's not really that old. So the idea that you would say, a nation's government produced a currency, that's definitely not true from that standpoint. But he ended up writing a whole blog post kind of summarizing some of the things that he had in the thread responding to that paper, of all of the private currencies that have existed throughout, or several of the private currencies that have existed throughout human history. So that was pretty interesting. Also the role that metal played in a lot of the coins specifically, but also like it may surprise people to know that there was also banknotes, like not bank notes as we know them today, but like, pieces of paper that were used, in exchange for value, as a, stand-in for actual metals, precious metals that were used as money.
I mean, like if you look at this, like this is literally issued by a mechanics bank. Like, you've had trade companies issue different currencies. And I mean, like one of the things I found most interesting, if you break this down, is in the Industrial Revolution, you actually had factories minting their own money because the royal mints were not like issuing low denomination coins in like less precious metals. So the factories that were paying people flooding into work there were literally minting their own money to pay their workers. Right. And then like, shells and things, when you really go back very far in history, like there is a long history of money that was not established by government.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I'm just thinking about that, like, factories that mint their own coins and everything. I just thought about, like, when I was reading this, and, you know, it just like reminds me of like the coal mines and the railroad. Like whenever those were being developed, like new towns would spring up and the railroad would give you the currency that you would use in town, and the coal miners the same deal. But I think that's whenever it started to really get to where the coinage that you were using was of absolutely no real value. It was just sort of like tin or something. But it was like required use.
We had to add subsidies. I mean, that happened with corn production as well, and you know, just on and on and on, and agriculture and other areas, and a lot of these subsidies, milk production, right? That still exists today, and that all affects the CPI and everything as well, by the way.
Yeah, the overall narrative that governments always want to apply after the fact is there was a need. Nobody knew how to solve this problem. It was really, really hard, and we were all just starving and incompetent and couldn't figure out any solutions. And then the king showed up, or the president, or whoever, and he was just a genius. And he just saw, oh, well, if we do this, then we can solve this problem, right? If we issue currency. We want to have all these competing dollars and all this craziness and bank runs and all of these problems, right? And so from on high, you know, he gifted us this piece of technology that solves our problems. But that's never really what happened, right? Like you could apply it to the post office, right? Before there was a government-sponsored post office, people did actually get letters to and from each other, surprisingly enough. But governments really love to control communication mediums. So they created a monopoly on letter carrying and said, if you carry a letter and you compete with us, we'll put you in a cage. And then they opened everybody's mail and looked at it and used that to control society. So every time you hear like the government had to do this, just look back in history. And like Janine said, you don't have to go that far. Like in the first sentence, he opens up with nation states. Well, nation states haven't even always exist. So they certainly haven't always provided a solution to this problem. But yeah, anything that you think the government has done for you, you could probably go back and find out it was provided for much better before they, quote, solve that problem. Money is definitely not an exception to that.
Yeah, and I also, because I just thought of something, this whole idea of, you know, ICOs and the idea of companies like releasing their own internal currency, like that's not even new if you consider all of this, issuing coins and stuff. The ICOs are just, it's a lot easier to, you know, make a contract on Ethereum than it is to like get the actual materials to mint coins and then distributing them to people physically. But even the concept of ICO via a company for fundraising isn't really that foreign either.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things that I thought was also interesting in this post from Nick was the way he talks about that, like the way that Bitcoin is different was they're talking about the metal layer of settlement and the way that like, you know, in all these previous iterations, like there's been these gatekeepers as far as like this layer of settlement between metals. And like, that's where Bitcoin is kind of like this new revolutionary thing where we have this open ledger of settlement. And, you know, anyone who participates can, I don't know, I guess like, I don't know. I'm just trying to remember if that was actually in this blog post or if I'm like remembering something else he said in a tweet. But yeah. It's definitely in the history of money and Bitcoin and where that is. It's like a layer of settlement has always been controlled by a few gatekeepers, and it's definitely a revolutionary thing to where we can all participate in that layer.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, to kind of go back to what Janine said, like as far as like company script is something with a huge history. You know, like I mentioned, Szabo was pointing to like factories in the Industrial Revolution minting their own coins. Like in 2008, the Mexican Supreme Court ruled that the Mexican subsidiary of Walmart had to stop paying its employees because they were paying them in Walmart script that was only redeemable at Walmart stores. So like that policy or way of doing things isn't even completely gone in the world today.
Yeah, man. It's like, I don't know. It's like one of these things where I was at a meetup the other night trying to explain like this, you know, this what is money question and stuff. And it's like a real meat and potatoes social contract that you can't just be like sort of locked up in any one sort of sector to kind of grasp this picture. And so, yeah, it's understandable if you can get lost in it really easily. And these systems have been around for a while, and it's hard to readjust the way we think about these things and even step outside that system to think about it like this. It's one of these things where since I've been in Bitcoin, I've really kind of been surprised to see how differently people think about things, such as the way we trust these things and value and all that sort of interesting stuff. And so, yeah, it's Bitcoin is one of those next iterations of money, and it's one of those things that I think will definitely be revolutionary. That's why I'm out here doing all this stuff. So it's always neat to see a post on this. I picked up a book on the history of money. It's an interesting topic that I think is, something that we'll be talking about Bitcoin for a long time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like it's really important to kind of step back and understand like all of this when you look at Bitcoin. I mean, like economics is it's not the simplest thing in the world if you haven't like settled down and like grasped the axioms first. But like once you actually get those axioms under your belt, like it's really just grabbing the right tool when you're looking at something. And I mean, it's like it really is critical to understanding how all of this works to at least have those basic axioms under your head.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, like, because probably might think that the role of private currencies kind of finished with the rise of centralized nation-state based currencies, but actually there still are a bunch of private currencies that operate around the world besides cryptocurrencies. Like one of them in the UK is called the Bitstamp pound, and that's around the area of Brixton, and it's like a local currency that is distributed between people, like shops and stuff that are in that area. So oh my god, she did me.
All right, stop distracting robots in here.
Janine didn't have her pretzels this morning, so she's not able to multitask like normal.
I can multitask. That's how I was reading the chat at the same time I was talking.
So rude to the audience. Sorry, guys. We just now we have to explain it. So we were talking
private
about
currencies. Private currencies still exist. They're still working. People use them, and they especially came back with Bitcoin because it's a private currency that operates on a global scale. No nation controls it. So that's the really different thing, because most private currencies prior to now, they operated on a local level because it was so much harder to coordinate, and it was more based on, people's personal relationships with each other or a specific company. But Bitcoin is one of those. Now it's a private currency that operates at a global level that's not just local. So that's the big difference.
Oh yeah, it's revolutionary, 100%.
Yeah, it's a constant battle for me on Twitter trying to help people understand that money has to be one thing. And even as I say that, a lot of people, I'm sure, that have been listening to me for like way too many hours are still like, no, it doesn't have to be one thing because I like my altcoins and I want to have lots of them. And Andreas said that every Girl Scout troop is going to have its own altcoin and we're all going to be happy. But no, money is one thing, and that's what money means. It's a unit of account. It's a medium of exchange. It's commonly used in a region and within a group of people. And the only thing that I would say you have to grasp beyond that to get that Bitcoin is going to crush all this other stuff is that it doesn't really make sense to have a regional currency when we're so connected globally now. It's fine to have have seashells within a few villages when you're out in the Pacific and it's the only people you trade with. But we have global trade now. We buy stuff from China as often as we buy stuff from Italy or anywhere else. And because of that, it just makes sense that we're going to have a global currency. So that's the name of the game. That's what everybody's fighting for, especially the altcoins that are pretending that they don't understand that. They know that that's what they're fighting for. They know that they can't exist unless they beat Bitcoin. But they don't want to admit that because it's a laughable possibility for all of them at this point. So yeah, that's the end of my intellectual rant. But now I feel like a jerk because I had an inside joke. So what I was making fun of in the troll box was Shinobi was saying, Szabo in a different way. And so I was making fun of that. And then Janine was bragging about being the only person that could say guacamo Zuko, right?
Giacomo.
I said it.
And I was explaining to Janine that she was wrong because I talked to Guacamo and he told me it's pronounced like guacamole, and she's wrong.
We're gonna have to get him back.
I don't think he literally meant you. I don't think he literally meant you pronounce it guaco. I think he just means that's how you pronounce the GI sound.
And I'm totally lying. He never said anything of the sort.
I knew it.
All right, but to get back to serious land, though.
Well, before, do you have something to say about Szabo, or moving on?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like, you know, to kind of go back to like what you were saying with the Brixton pound, it's like that's what money is. It's those social like bonds of trust. And I mean, like that's like as far as like altcoins competing for Bitcoin, JW, they're not going to win because they all seem to just be completely ignoring that money is trust. And like that's Szabo's entire like rationale for his speaking to like social scalability. Like the more you expand the user base of a currency, the more you need to solidify that ability to trust it, to be able to validate it and make sure everything's functioning as it should. And if you don't look at a blockchain system from that point of view in terms of scaling throughput, of maintaining that ability to validate and trust it, then you just completely decohese those bonds of trust, which are what make money.
Yeah, totally. The way that I say it is people are going to use the thing that works best. When it comes to money, you want something that's really hard to steal and easy to use. So yeah, that's Bitcoin. It's nothing else is even trying to be hard to steal. Everything else is more than happy to be easy for any government to steal. So, and if they're saying they're not, they're just lying, right? Like Monero or something.
Yeah, and since we're talking about kind of monetary policy and stuff in general, there was something interesting that I heard Brett Scott say several months ago in talk where he was disputing the legitimacy of the term store of value. And he said that it's not really possible to store value because value is an intersubjective concept. Like it's not subjective in terms of the value is just whatever it is. In some cases, like, you know, value is personal, but with money, that's a shared system among, you know, a group of people. So it has to be intersubjective. And he said that because value is intersubjective, you can't really store it because it's not like a tangible thing. And so he thought he was like debating whether store of value actually existed as a concept. And I'm not quite sure, but I think the conclusion he came to is that the concept of store of value is more about people's confidence in the stability of their understanding of other people's value of a certain system.
Yeah,
so totally. It's more about confidence and trust. Like that's kind of going off of what Shinobi said, that money is about trust. It's kind of store of value is about you trusting other people to reflect the same value estimation that you have.
Yep.
Or totally, at least better.
Yeah. The other thing that I say about money is it's the thing that's the easiest to sell. So if you had a gallon of milk, you'd be like, well, I have to store it. There's costs associated with that. But at the end of the day, if I walked into a marketplace and I had $5 in my pocket or a gallon of milk, which would be the easiest to sell to somebody, money has to be the thing that's easiest to sell. So it kind of ends up being the best of a few different categories. And in the case of like gold, it was the easiest to sell, but it wasn't the easiest to subdivide. So we had to compromise and add silver to the mix. And that was a real pain in the ass. But we don't have to do that with Bitcoin. And it just, you know, it works as money because it was designed to be money, right? Like when Satoshi was thinking through electronic cash, he was aware of all of these concepts of Austrian economics, and he could make reference to them constantly and very easily. So he knew that he had to make an asset that checked all these boxes, and he did. So all this other stuff, just, you know, it's dumb.
Good for Bitcoin.
All right, so you guys ready to move along to the titular story?
Yeah, man, let's keep moving along here.
Was that a reference to the Satoshi Vision conference?
You can make it one, but I meant the one in the title.
I can make a connection between the two. So 2 episodes ago, we brought up the crypto influencer list, and I want to point out, like, obviously Nick Szabo just schooled like the entire Federal Reserve with this blog post, but he also kind of schooled Craig Wright, because Nick Szabo is #1 on that list, and Craig Wright is not even on it anywhere. He's not even in the top 300 people. Like, that's pretty bad.
That must mean he's Satoshi /S.
That's really interesting. So he has so few influential followers on Twitter that the algorithm said he's not even in the top 300. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
that's encouraging. Yeah.
I think even Veer and Jahan were on there too, right?
Yeah, Veer I think was somewhere like between 15 and 20. Elizabeth Stark was ahead of Roger Ver. That's the only ones I remember.
Hodl was on there. Mr. Hodl made it before it dropped off. There's some justice in the world.
Right. I was still surprised I didn't see any of you guys on there, but whatever. It'll change.
I don't want to be on that list, but on to the titular story. Binance is in talks to move to Malta after getting a warning letter from the Japanese financial services, as well as the equivalent of the SEC in Hong Kong, warning them don't be selling securities. So this is fucking huge news, because Malta is one of those jurisdictions that I've been looking at for a while now as like, you're in the perfect position to set yourself up as a crypto haven.
Right, I saw the story, looked at Malta on the map and zoomed out, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense.
And I mean, like, they're in talks right now with local banks to be able to establish fiat on and off ramps. You know, they're moving mostly here because it's a friendly regulatory jurisdiction, but also what I found most interesting is the CEO of Binance is literally been discussing a bill that Malta is looking at to kind of set up a regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies and set up things like policies for handling ICOs. So not only is the business moving to a friendly jurisdiction, integrating potentially with fiat on and off ramps, but they're having a direct influence over the legislation that the Maltese government is trying to kind of establish to kind of get rid of the regulatory gray areas for any other businesses in future. And so, I mean, like, this is fucking nuts.
Yeah, did some, like I said, I was looking at the map and kind of zoomed out and saw that. And then I did like a quick Wikipedia search just to sort of see the history of the area. And of course it dates to prehistory, but it has been home to the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Arabs, the Normans, the Sicilians, the Spanish, the Knights of St. John, the French, and the British. So those are some pretty powerful empires. And this definitely looks like a piece of land that you can, protect your, whatever you're trying to build over there.
I noticed a while back that Adam Back has his Twitter location in Malta, and Hans Hermann Hoppe lives in Malta. So I
need to get out there, man, check that place out.
Yeah, I mean, if those guys are hanging out at a coffee shop somewhere, I totally want to be there and just overhear. But the thing that keeps me from leaving the United States is medical care. Like, I've seen people cut their ankle like surfing and almost die because they're hours and hours away from blood. So it's like you just return to freaking early 1800s when you go to any of these beautiful places in France. It's absolutely absurd.
Actually, JW, Malta is a medical tourist nation. There's like a whole bunch of people from the UK that go there for medical stuff.
All right. Well, I tell you what, if they have plenty of whole blood of various types on hand, then I will probably go check it out. They'll be like the first one to meet that criteria. Like, there's nowhere in South America, even though like you have skyscrapers and stuff, that has blood on hand. It's really amazing.
Just trying to avoid losing your blood, buddy.
No, it's just a fundamental. Yeah. Yep. Totally. And I get that. And so it might be a little bit better. I have more, I just have, I suspect that they're not, they also don't have it, but I'll do some research and get back to you guys. Honestly, it's one of those things that we take for granted in the US. Like, for example, I know for a fact that, Panama, big country, right? Maybe it's a little bit backwoods. They don't even have blood on the ambulance that follows the president around.
So, but hold up, JW, I gotta cut in here, man. I'm a veteran in the VA system, and you're talking about how great healthcare is here in the United States, and I'm just sitting here thinking about what I've been going through for a decade, and
it's a disaster.
That thing's available. Dude. It's available for you. I mean, if you have that ability, but when we talk about the general public and what's going on here in the United States and healthcare that is afforded to them, I don't know.
First of all, Portugal and Malta are not in Europe. They're squarely in South America. And secondly, I'm saying that the United States does, no, I'm joking. It's a Arrested Development reference there. No, I get that it's in Europe to Shinobi that's tweeting that out. But I think you'd be surprised how few developed nations that are relatively wealthy don't have some pretty basic stuff. The United States is actually getting worse with medical care from what I'm able to understand. And I wouldn't say that it's great, but that is just one of the things that I noticed in my travels that is now on my checklist, because I almost saw somebody die because they cut their foot surfing and there was no blood.
Think about when, let's say you cut your foot surfing, they give you the blood, they patch you up, they sew you up, but then what do? They give you those pain pills and then they put you out there and hope that you're going to start feeling better like that. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like
it's not great. You don't even have to worry about that.
It's not really been.
You don't have the blood.
Well, no, that's where it's I'm just saying it's as someone that's been through this VA system and all this stuff, it's really I see preventative healthcare is the only way to go. I mean, if you can avoid losing the blood, try to that's the best thing to do. And just preventative healthcare. If it hits the fan, it's always going to be a situation of you better hope, hold your butt and pray, because you could be in the middle of the woods in the United States and it doesn't matter, because then you're still going to die because you lost all your blood because you didn't have access to it. So,
totally. Yep. After that experience, I was definitely more conscious of going out to national parks and stuff like that. I would still do it, right? It's not like I'm going to avoid hiking to the top of a mountain and being 5 hours away. But I'm also aware that I could probably get a helicopter to come pick me up before I bleed out. So there's just a lot of those little things that, that keep me from moving to Malta.
But it is also that coral could cut that artery. I mean, it could just be that's where I always put those things is I try not to think about it too much, because it's one of those things that's just so out of my control. I mean, it could just happen the right way that it doesn't even matter.
It's also big, it's one of those countries that its economy is heavily reliant on tourism, so they probably have a lot of helicopters, even if they're not owned by the hospitals.
Yeah, that's fair.
Try to get one to pick you up. I think you might find that it's not quite as easy as it is in the US.
Yeah, I mean, granted, there's definitely a more solid infrastructure to get people the emergency care that they need, most likely here. But I mean, I think that the availability of, good healthcare is probably an option at most nations like Malta, where it's sort of a economic center of the nation, of the developed world. And I mean, yeah, I don't know.
My guess, not knowing, my guess is that the average income of somebody in Malta is maybe 60% of the average income of the person in the United States. And if there's a huge advantage to stuff like that, right? When it comes to medical care, you want to be where the rich people are. And there's lots of little subtle things that I've just observed having spent time in these other places that you wouldn't think of until you need it. And then you're
I'm going to Google check you.
Because we're relatively poor here. Shit.
Yeah, there's definitely been some cases of some tourists that just got some terrible bug in India and ended up in a hospital and died because that infrastructure wasn't there. But yeah, I think that in these global, we're starting to see there's a global class and these certain areas of the globe where there's a lot of money, and I'm sure there's some people to provide for those people. Not everyone, and not the infrastructure for everybody. And it's I don't know. It's one of those things where you're kind of giving up one thing for another. I mean, like people go down to what is it, like Guatemala for stem cell treatments. I mean, it's like, I mean, it's not a really developed nation or anything, but it's like people go down there for that because it's available there. I don't know, like how we jumped on to Malta and healthcare and all that sort of stuff, but
I think I was just saying,
I think we can just keep going on this.
If anybody is in Malta and they know that Adam Back and Hans Hoppe hang out together and that blood is available, within like 15 minutes, let me know. I want to come.
All right. Well, yeah, like Malta, it just seems like pretty cool in the context of history, and like just like powerful nations that have used it for a place to conduct business.
JW, you've emphasized blood so much, so I'm kind of wondering if you're a vampire Wookiee now.
No, but if a dog gets his foot cut, he can bleed out. So maybe there's something there. A very minor cut on a dog could be life-threatening.
All right, we're getting
into the weeds. I pulled it out of the weeds. Out of the weeds, guys.
We're only an hour and a half into the show, and we've already covered like 30% of the stories. So I don't know why we should try to accelerate this.
Only 30%? I think it's more than that. Are you sure?
No, I don't know. I wasn't looking.
Well, I just want to point out that I prefer cold countries. So if my foot ever gets cut, I'm going to stick it in the snow, and then they'll stop the bleeding.
Hell yeah.
All right. Everybody now evacuate the weeds. We have evacuated
where are we going?
And we're going to Japan. We're going to Japan where the Yahoo Japan subsidiary is buying a share in an exchange, and then they're going to take the technology and launch a new exchange later.
But Japan is where Satoshi is right now. I don't want to go there.
Yeah, I mean, this is this I think is something to kind of pay attention to, because this kind of thing we've seen before in Japan, and I think we're going to start seeing more of it in other places. I mean, like, really think about this. Yahoo's subsidiary in Japan is buying shares in the exchange BitArg. And they're pretty much going to take all of that technology and spin off a new exchange at some later point, like Yahoo, like another major tech firm, and one that's very international compared to a lot of the other companies in Japan we've seen kind of get involved in the crypto space, is starting their own exchange. I mean, like, how long until we see companies like Apple, like Microsoft, like Google start deciding, shit, like, we need to get some kind of stake or share in companies in this space, because like the big American tech giants, they pretty much stayed out of it. Like they haven't really gotten involved in anything in this space. Like a lot of their venture capital firms, shareholders have been kind of dipping their toes in, but none of these actual companies have exposed themselves to the space yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a sign of the times, because a few years back, it would be lucky to see a mention of Bitcoin in the news because of, our infighting or the price or something like that. So to see major companies like Yahoo talking about getting involved in creating an exchange is definitely, sign of the times that things are moving forward in a direction that's going to, we're going to see a lot more of these. And I mean, like, really the major tech companies, I think I saw something about Google investing in some sort of blockchain solution for something recently. So, I mean, like they're definitely making their way in.
Yeah, because, Google doesn't already run pretty much any service you can think of. They have to run their own blockchain now too. I was literally commenting about that in DMs. I was like, Google runs an email service. They run they did run a social network that kind of failed. They run a video sharing service, email, kind of social network, but not really. They run a search engine. They run a browser, all of these things. And I was like, then go back to Twitter and, oh, okay, they're now making some kind of blockchain thing. So now they're now getting into blockchain territory. Also, I would never trust an exchange run by Yahoo, because as everyone should remember, they were giving pretty much all, they had like a backdoor in their system for years for their email service. So no way am I using an exchange by Yahoo.
They had to find a profit like somewhere, right? So they were just selling people's data. Like the whole Google thing is really, it's, I don't know, it's kind of frightening to me, you know, like here in Boulder, I've been like trying to do some things, just talking to people about getting crypto involved and stuff. And everybody seems really hyped up about Google and where they're going and everything. And I heard like a real dystopian thing where somebody was talking about, oh yeah, in the future, you know, you'll be in your autonomous vehicle just riding along, but you'll have to pay to turn the ads off in the windows. It's just like, God, what are these people thinking? Like, at some point, we got to step back and reanalyze what we're doing here, because it's getting to a dystopia of like that. Yeah, like these guys are coming into space, but I don't trust them. It's definitely a sign of the times, but it's not like 100% positive. There's definitely not even close to 100%, and it's something where like I think we should take it seriously and put strong pushback on some of these things.
I think it's a good thing, man. I mean, it is a big company that has a big brand name. It's always good when there's more adoption of Bitcoin. Like if I was going to buy something from Yahoo, I wouldn't expect that they would screw me, right? They've got a big enough brand name to where I would expect they wouldn't rip me off. So I think that's good. I think even though they're probably going to end up doing a bunch of altcoin garbage, you know, at least they're in the space and it's getting closer. But yeah, as far as like the dystopian, you know, alien or whatever that, what's that? Dang, it's escaping me. Same guy. It's like the same sci-fi universe as Alien. It's anyway, as far as like the constant advertising in the future just looking like crap, I think that's not likely. Our quality of life has just continued to get better over the last 100 years. I don't see any reason to believe that's going to reverse. And people get annoyed with advertising, so they'll choose not to have it if they can afford to. So, you know, Lightning completely opens up the possibility of rebuilding the internet on micropayments. I would certainly rather pay $20 a month to not have ads, have a great experience, and also pay for my internet connection. And I think if you know you do the math with all of the overhead and the fraud, you know, click fraud is just crazy billions of dollars. I think that would probably work really, really well. Like be more profitable for everybody involved. So I'm optimistic.
I mean, like I'm optimistic about us moving forward, but at a certain point, I start to think the technology becomes a hindrance whenever we're talking about, you know, are we taking into consideration like the fact that we are American and like we're supposed to have freedoms and liberties and privacy and these sort of things? Like that's where I feel like we kind of have to step back and sort of just reanalyze what we're doing here and make sure that it takes into considerations those sorts of things. Because if you just start creating this autonomous system, this fully autonomous thing, because one of the things I hear here is, oh, well, we've got to reach out to the other side. We've got to figure out a way to understand the other side, being Democrat and Republican and everything. And like at the same time, I just see these policies being put in place that are just divisive. And I mean, like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
sorry for the rant.
No, it's all right. I mean, it does tie back into the kind of cypherpunk philosophy, right? Like, don't get involved in politics. Don't try to understand the other side. Just build better tools, and people will use them, and the whole conversation won't happen anymore. So you don't even have to pick a side. Just, you know, you don't have to decide whether you're pro taxation or pro the Fed or any of that. Just decide that you don't want to see your wealth destroyed and buy some Bitcoin. And, you know, I didn't have to convince you, and we're all on the same side again.
Right. But if we I don't know, if we let it go to that end and just break, I feel like we're going to lack the adoption that Bitcoin needs. Like it's going to be, you know, like, of course, the rich get richer type deal. I mean, like if we don't sort of like make a concerted effort to sort of like at least include this in the available options, then, you know, like, yeah, it'll be autonomous until like the market has chosen, and like, you know, it'll be, I don't know, that's where it'll be like, as far as what we're trying to do here in America, I don't know, is like what used to be like a, you know, equal opportunity and all that sort of stuff, where now it's like, you know, there's just such two different levels, like that can't be done. So I don't know. Kind of a weird place to be in this discussion. I don't even know what the story was we started off with.
No, you're just struggling with completely giving up on politics, which is one of the most important.
I don't like. Well, one of the things is like in the chat, Corey is saying something about like, you know, people are this and we're insects and we're all, you know, a virus and like I've been to Afghanistan. I was a first responder to Hurricane Katrina. I've seen humanity at some of its worst, and that's not the case. Even at those places where it's at its worst, you'll find humanity and you'll see what humanity really is. And it's people sticking together and doing something to where we can get out of a bad outcome. And if you look at the world through that lens,
no, I don't. I'm with you, man. I'm totally on the opposite side of things, right? Like, I don't think that, I think that the average person doesn't want to hurt anybody else for no reason, right? I think the average person, if they saw somebody that was in pain, would feel a certain amount of pain themselves and would respond by trying to help out, right? Even in freaking Afghanistan, where we're supposed to think that everybody is really an insect and we should just burn them all, you know, with a nuclear bomb so that we can grow poppies or whatever. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I think humanity is, you know, it's definitely not what I would like it to be, but it's not nearly as dangerous and violent as politicians make it seem. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they say, like, you have to be really, really fearful of your neighbor, and the only person that can help you is me, and give me 30 to 70% of all your stuff every month, right? So there are solutions. They're just not political solutions.
Right, and I get you in the fact that, like, 99% of the world you're at, you know, the political solution would never work. But like, I feel like I'm at this place where these people think they're, you know, they got this like very intellectual, cutting edge tech mindset that's where they're at. And like, you know, if we put these ideas forward, then, you know, maybe that humanity's there and they can see like, you know, look, this is all coming from a, you know, a generation thing, and they need to take it seriously. And yeah, I think that you know, reaching out on that political level is not just nonsensical. I think that we could, you know, garner greater Bitcoin adoption and help save some lives and stuff. I mean, but it's just like, yeah, that's probably like my not rosy colored outlook. Trust me, I don't have that. Like, I start every day out with dark colored glasses on, but I look for the things that are going to bring back some light into this life. And that's where these efforts are. That's where I'm doing that stuff. So
totally. Yeah. The future's bright, man. I agree.
All right, man. Sorry for the rant, guys.
I'm gonna bring an opposing rant to the table. No,
opposing of what?
I do not think the future is bright. I think it is a lot less dark than it could be if things like Bitcoin succeed, if people actually continue improving the technology we use. But dude, the media lies to people constantly. There are now deep learning algorithms that can do a better job of mapping Carrie Fisher's realistic face to a CGI representation with a single graphics card than a multi-million-dollar rendering farm can do. You can now filter things in or out of live footage as it's happening to distort what is being presented to people. We are literally a year or two away from living in 1984, in not being able to trust a single thing that you see, whether it's live footage or not. We are a year or two away from not being able to trust video footage or evidence of things in courts. Things are going to get very fucked.
That all sounds good to me, man. That all sounds positive.
But things are going to get very fucked and confusing before they
remember. There are CCDs hidden inside your LCD panels nowadays. Like, you know, check the patents. That shit's super secretive. But yeah, you know, no cameras on the side of the device. The actual, you know, the progression from Xbox Live, that not the Xbox Live, the Xbox Kinect system. Well, that integrated the CCDs, the camera capture device in the back of the LCD, in between the pixels. Like, come on, it sounds too bizarre. It sounds like it's just an insane, just leap into bizarro land. This is a reality we actually live in. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, things are. I'm not saying everything is better. I'm saying overall it's getting better, right? Like fewer people starved to death this month than starved to death 6 months ago, and that's going to be the case 6 months from now. And there's some scary stuff that you guys were talking about, and believe me, I'm totally with you that this shit could take a very different turn, and we could be in a scarier place than we are right now. Which is, one of the reasons I'm working on stuff like this. I'm motivated to avoid that possible dystopian nightmare. But the one thing that I would say you should keep in mind is that all of those scary pieces of technology, we all have access to those now, right?
Yeah.
Like the 50 years ago, if you spent enough money, you could have absolutely framed somebody for murder. You could have absolutely created film footage that no reasonable expert could tell the difference and would have at least confused any jury. If that technology gets democratized and we can't trust video footage anymore, that might be okay because we shouldn't have been trusting it in the first place, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I love a lot of this technology. I mean, a lot of it's just putting the proper mechanisms, like eliminating the proprietary nature, which prevents people from examining the validity of videos and such like that. Like doing this the right way means everything. It means we don't shoot ourselves or blow our legs off further down the road. We need to make sure that this stuff gets employed the right way.
Yeah, and if you assume, if you make just a couple assumptions, right? Like forget about all of the things that would require research. Just assume that the average person is more generous and kind than the average politician. And then look at the reality that the average person, the gap between the average person's power and the average politician's power is shrinking. That means that things should tend to be better.
But I mean, it goes so far beyond just courts and evidence. It's like people have to make announcements to everybody. Like there are public figures that have to get up and speak to large groups of people. And all of you can't trust any of that after this stuff really permeates out there. Communication becomes distorted on a societal level.
You're not an idiot for wanting a smart fridge. There's convenience there. There's convenience for having a little tablet there and being able to use that as a TV, start your Pandora on it. You don't need to put a TV in your kitchen or some shit, right? For a lot of people, in a business workplace and places like that, it makes perfect sense. But when you can't trust the stuff and there's no way to actually verify the trust there, and nation states are demanding that this software is employed on every single device they can, like in our cars, and the safety features are a backdoor means to get tracking and the ability to remotely drive you off the road in your car. Same as the TVs. Here's this stuff, if you put this stuff here, we can get our backdoor and we can get our cameras in there and we can ship that off to China or wherever and start spying on people, or people right in America, or heads of corporations, or it leads us down a terrible path.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear on this. It's it's everything right there. It's we're not going to be, Star Trek, everything's peaceful and 100% perfect, or 1984. And that's we'll be somewhere in between. And the thing that we're doing here and the things that we're working on will hopefully guide us toward a brighter than darker future. I don't think the end goal is either one of those, all bright or all dark. We're going to be somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, take the good with the bad, but it's a constant battle, constantly verifying that this stuff is doing what it says it does. That's half the battle, and a lot of people aren't doing the diligence to evaluate whether a product is of a certain quality, or if the software runs in a certain way, or executes as expected even. Those are the guarantees that we need, and those are the guarantees that we're just not getting.
Mm-hmm. But I guess, slide along into a positive thing coming, I guess. All of the goodies Blockstream is spitting out this week. JW kind of mentioned this a little earlier, but so far Blockstream has released 3 different apps that function using Lightning Network. The system called File Bazaar, which would allow you to sell for micropayments any kind of document, like a video, a text document, a photograph, pretty much anything that big content producers on places like YouTube create. Aside from that, they have created a Lightning publisher for WordPress so that you can build in Lightning payments into things like your blog or any other traditional website content you can produce. And last, Nanotip, which is a micropayments Lightning tipping app. So if they keep this up, hopefully by the end of the week, I think we're going to have apps to accept payments for pretty much any kind of independently producible content on the internet by the end of the week. And I mean, this is fucking, like people who think that Blockstream is doing nothing, open your eyes. The things are finally pouring out of the spigot.
So they just released another one because we were talking about Craig Wright so long. People that were productive had time to build an entire new application.
Awesome. What's this one?
This allows you to basically charge for access to an API. So you were saying, like, I think they're eventually going to release something that allows you to charge for anything. That's exactly what this is. So my guess is they probably use this API in the background on some of their other stuff. But this is totally awesome. I mean, this is really cool. This is the kind of thing where you could have a Wi-Fi access point and you could pay for access to an internet connection. You could pay for really anything that you can build an application and charge for. So really, really awesome. Yeah, maybe I'll use this for MathBot when I'm trying to charge and pay out people when they solve math and programming puzzles. So this is really cool.
There you go. Maybe you'll be able to get that rolling out the door a little faster than you were hoping.
Yeah, totally. I just told somebody I'm not going to probably get to it for 6 months, but now maybe this will make it a hell of a lot easier. So this is freaking cool. But what I love is that every single one of these things just destroys like 30 stupid startups, right? Like Steam is stupid. What's the other one? It's not Y'all's. It was the one that Y'all's kind of yours, right? Another stupid startup that was dumb, poorly timed, jackass CEO that was, pushing Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash or whatever, just devastated, right? Like his business no longer makes sense because real good technology is now available and he was trying to force it with dumb shit.
His business never made sense. I mean, like, it's literally just we collect a 5% fee on payments right now. That's his business model. What's like, okay, let's go into magical fantasy land where yours explodes. Well, how are you going to handle scaling your server, your content distribution? Like, are you going to be able to pay for those like hosting costs based on 5%? Like, are you just going to have to fine tune like your percentage there? Like, what's your business model beyond just taking a cut of people? What happens when people take something like BitTorrent or IPFS and just build a decentralized distribution aspect and take payments directly? Like that whole, like, building a business model around that it's freaking retarded. Like, the only thing that's valuable with something like that is the network effect, which he has to bootstrap from scratch. When something like Twitter or Facebook or fucking WhatsApp like drops micropayments into things, they're done. Like, people just use that instead.
Totally. No, you're absolutely right. And now the API is freaking sitting there. So if Twitter wants to use it, it's ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just was gonna say, like, hell yeah, the Laps thing, and I'm excited about it. Been always interested about this Lightning Network from years ago. So to see it coming into beta and like Laps and all this stuff, like it's great stuff to see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just like, get the things built, get them out there. And then when people actually start coming in, buying Bitcoin, wanting to accept Bitcoin, to hold Bitcoin, all of the tools for them to actually do this, they'll be out there. Like, it's get the road built. And then when people actually show up, it's there for them to walk down. Alrighty. So who's ready for the disappointing news?
Oh no, got some disappointing news. What is it?
Well, Chelan County in Washington has followed the East Coast city whose name escapes me example and established a mining moratorium.
Right. I guess it's like there's just such a rush to these areas where there is this cheap power, and they're kind of just sort of left wondering what to do about it because it's starting to raise their rates of electricity, and so they throw these moratoriums out there to figure out what to do.
Wait, what's that? It says they pointed. Go back up a little bit.
No.
Why are you not going? They also pointed to health and safety concerns for the residents, pointing to rogue Bitcoin mining operations that need to be examined. What?
Well, I mean, that's to be, I think the government needs to mind their own damn business, but I mean, I don't think that is a totally unfounded concern because when you get past more than a machine or two, you're talking drawing more power than outlets can provide. You're talking now you have to actually start tinkering with the electrical layout and things that there are actual legitimate concerns about fire hazards for. So that I do get.
Yeah.
But I think that the more interesting point here is if you look at the review process they're setting up, anything that uses over 5 megawatts in capacity is pretty much being put under a microscope. And I think pretty much the gist of what's going on here is the interest in establishing new mining operations is exceeding their normal expansion as far as electrical capacity. So they're starting to see more interest in mining than they can actually provide in new electricity as they actually expand things.
Yeah, this is how monopolies operate. They don't necessarily appreciate additional customers or additional demand for their service because they're already screwing everybody over at the rate with which they want to screw everybody over. So normally, if it was any other service, if the demand went through the roof, they would be like, great, we're going to raise prices and we're going to invest more and we're going to address this, increased capacity. But that's not what you're seeing here. So it's just a reminder of why you don't want monopolies providing anything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think this is going to wind up going the same way that it probably will on the East Coast. They're just going to start charging different rates for people who are coming there for purposes of mining and probably kind of play with that to disincentivize growth beyond what they want in the area. So, I mean, I think the wild expansion in all these areas with cheap power is probably going to cool down a little bit, and miners are going to have to get a little more inventive or a little more resourceful when it comes to looking for access to power.
Yeah, it's time to just spin up a shoe factory and make it look like you've got some bins of shoes up at the front in case anybody ever swings by, but just have all the miners running all that electricity in the back.
Yeah, just Breaking Bad style, right? No, this is just a clothes washing place, right? We just do laundry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have just really old, inefficient equipment. We just need, gigawatts. Yeah,
that actually reminds me of a meme that was going around for a while where, because you always assume, especially in the winter, if you're in a neighborhood and the rooftop of some house is not covered in snow, whereas all the other ones are, then you're like, well, why? There has to be a reason for why there's no snow, and that's mostly because the house is generating more heat than usual. And that used to be a sign of, some kind of drug operation because you needed heat to grow the plants. But there was this meme going around that was looking at someone's roof that had no snow on it. It was drug operation or crypto mining.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the potheads are going to get some cover from Bitcoin. So using it.
Right. Yeah. Now they're going to get their operations rushed in on, and they're going to be the legal thing in the future. And people are going to be like, oh, crap, it was just a pot growing miner operation.
But I don't know. In the interest of getting food in Janine's stomach as soon as possible, you guys want to slide along?
Yeah, let's keep rolling. We got to get some food over there.
All right. The United Kingdom is establishing a new task force to go over regulations for the crypto space.
That is a scary header picture.
I know, right? Really?
That is a sinister looking dude. Oh, by the way, Chancellor Philip Hammond, he was, I believe, he was the one person who commented that the United Nations saying that, you know, their ruling on Julian Assange being in an Ecuadorian embassy should be respected. He said that it didn't change anything. So, yay, United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, pretty much just as blah blah, new task force, manage the risks around crypto assets. Truly exciting market, but the scammers are spoiling it for everybody. But there is David Siegel, I believe, out of Zug, who is pretty much trying to push them in a direction of just throw the framework out and start from scratch. And honestly, I don't really know whether to look at that as a positive or a negative. Because, I mean, if you just kind of look at how these issues have been handled in the U.S., I mean, it's pretty clearly obvious that existing regulations are, like, they're applicable. You look at and classify all of these different crypto assets under different categories in existing regulation and how to deal with them. It's all there already. And, you know, there's the potential, if you start from scratch and establish a whole new framework, to get things in a better position, but there's also the potential to just fuck it up even 10 times more, because now it's like, ooh, all the things we can stuff in here, as opposed to here is the existing shit. Now, what does it apply to and what doesn't it apply to? And given the way that the UK has kind of been swinging politically over the last few years, I think it's a lot more likely that they just get excited over the new things they can stuff in there and wind up with something way more infringing or impeding than what we have now.
Yeah, I would just say if you know, you're doing cryptocurrency stuff, you should not be in the UK. Like, sorry, they have this whole IP bill thing that got passed in the last 2 years or so. So
I mean, if you like, you know, having free speech, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like, you can't even say what you want on social media. I mean, when's the thought police come to the public? You know, when are they sitting at the bar stool?
Yeah, I mean, I can. It has gotten pretty dystopian over there. I think that's why you made a jump to get out over there in Germany. It's just but I mean, like, yeah, we've seen these task force jump up everywhere now. It's like everybody's trying to figure out what to do about it, and UK's not different here.
Oh, we're not only in Germany. We're all over the place. We're like we keep changing it because Germany's not that great either.
Yeah, well, I've been to like several different countries I can't even pronounce now yet.
Just keep on sliding.
Yeah,
but
I don't know how important the task force thing is or not. Like, is it just some manager that wants to put his name out there? Because I'm sure that there was already a team of people that were looking at these problems, but whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
By the way, Shinobi, if we have any Swiss viewers, I think you need to apologize for how you just pronounced Zug.
I am very clear that I can only pronounce things in American. I'm sorry. I apologize for the shortcomings, but it's just who I am.
Okay.
What's the proper pronunciation?
Zug.
Zug. Yeah, we have those
In
syllables, man. You can do that. You can say Zug.
Zug.
Alrighty.
There's no clicking involved or anything. We can do that.
Oh, damn.
All right, 2 stories, 2 left.
Oh,
we got
pissing.
one that's like nothing. It's a quick mention. Atlanta, Georgia, get your shit together. Ransomware was last year. How did you not get your shit together after last year? Like, I literally have friends who work in FedEx, And it was like literally just freak out, shut the computers down. We're shutting the whole business down for like half a day because nobody has any idea how to deal with any of this. Like, how is that not a wake-up call to audit your security? Like, if you don't, some jackass is going to go copy and paste a virus out there, tweak it to a different exploit, and your shit's going to get owned unless you cough up some Bitcoin. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, I mean, like, you hope people would learn. And I don't know, when I read this, I was kind of wondering, like, yeah, like, they should have done something. So, like, I was thinking, like, I wonder if somebody in there, like, intentionally didn't upgrade something to where they could do this sort of thing. But I don't know. Like, yeah, it's definitely something where, you know, if you're a vital infrastructure and you haven't upgraded your system to handle the security of ransomwares, then you're outdated. Keep updating.
I gotta say, I'm just shocked. I mean, I cannot believe that Keisha Bottoms wasn't on this. I'm pretty sure she's got time for that in between pole dancing or whatever. So, you know, come on, Mayor.
Kesha?
Take care of your city.
Are you talking about Kesha?
The mayor's last name is Bottoms.
Oh.
I don't even know.
That's it. That's all I got. That's the best comment I can come up with.
I wonder if he's related to Foggy Bottoms, like the blues singer. Is it Foggy Bottoms or Soggy Bottoms? One of those like really old blues guys. Maybe that's how, you know. It's like blue hot. Those families got some clout down there in the South.
The only thing I think of whenever Georgia is mentioned is that it's one of those states in the U.S. that makes it illegal to freely access the law. Like you cannot have Georgia law on your website without permission from them, or you're gonna get. There was a guy, what's his name? I can't remember. Carl something. And he tried to basically make Georgia law public, and they called him a terrorist.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's great though, because then you can always argue like ignorance of the law. And you can say, well, it's not allowed to be public, so, you know, ignorance is totally acceptable in this.
Yeah, I think that's really common outside Georgia though too. There's the database is proprietary that with all of the court precedent. So yeah, you can't get access to it unless you are an attorney and you pay a certain number of dollars per month to access the law. So yeah, it's it's one of those great little things. Like you can't defend yourself. It's it's insane.
I was way off.
Yeah.
The Soggy Bottom thing is like from that freaking Oh Brother We're Out There. It's not some real blues legend. I don't know what I was thinking. All
right. Got one story left. Everybody ready to freak out about it?
Oh yeah, what's going on? Oh yeah.
Bitstamp is being sold to South Korean investors. Oh no. Everything's going to implode.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's I mean, this is kind of something I have been expecting for a long time. I mean, if you're running an exchange in this space, you are either going to get your shit together in absolutely every way and get your system on par with legacy infrastructure, or you're going to sell out to somebody who will or is part of that legacy infrastructure. And so, I mean, they're pretty much it looks like going to be selling out for around $400 million. So that's pretty close to the Poloniex valuation. So, I mean, I think now seeing two sales like this, it should kind of give us a rough idea of kind of how buyers are looking at the valuation of things like this. And, you know, for all the people freaking out about like Bitstamp changing in Europe or shutting down, like that would be a ridiculously foolish thing, as BitJohnny here on Twitter was saying. Like if for some for somebody in South Korea to buy out Bitstamp and not keep up their licenses in Europe and keep up their existing customer base who wants to stick with it would just be the most ridiculous thing in the world, because that license is the exposure to a customer base. That customer base is how they make money. So I really don't see any kind of radical changes, except maybe in different jurisdictions they expand to. Like, for instance, if they expand into South Korea, like, they're going to obviously have to deal with regulations and so forth that they would have to there. But I do not see any radical changes in how business is conducted in existing customer jurisdictions right now. That would completely undermine the entire point of buying the exchange in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the motivation is just to buy the thing just to get the freaking license, right?
Right.
Ah, man. So, yeah, I really hope their CEO sticks around. I am not going to try and pronounce his name because I will butcher the hell out of it. But he has been one of the few CEOs in the space who didn't just bow and bend over backwards to humor bullshit like the New York agreement and constant coercive attempts to push forks. And we need people in this space who aren't just going to bend over backwards, take a bribe, and push some kind of shell game swaparoo with different blockchains. So
Yeah,
I hope you're sticking around as part of that deal, man.
yeah, Bitstamp's been around for a long while, and it's one of those that's just been like throughout all the drama has just like maintained its you know, its ability doing what it does, and like yeah, I mean, eventually, like you're saying, these exchanges, they're gonna get in line, or like in Afghanistan, purchasing this stuff, it's just like access to the license and the customer base, and it all makes sense. And I don't see a reason why this deal would cause them to really start pivoting in a different direction. So yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, like, people take it in different directions. I guess some people are upset about it, but I kind of see it as understandable.
Profits are good. They attract other competition. So if these guys were able to have a successful exit, that means that there's going to be more VC money that thinks that an exchange or something in the space might be able to be profitable and give them a good exit. So yeah, it's all good news as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I guess any last thoughts on the Bitstamp news or in general before we wrap it off?
Just a final thought. Like, this is our final show here for a couple weeks on our hiatus, and I know that sometimes we get like a little bit of flack for taking breaks and everything, but just like want to say, like, this is part of the evolution of creating content here, and like we sort of have to step outside of it for a minute just to sort of analyze everything. And if you can leave a comment in the sections below if you got something you want to stress about what's been going on this past season, and something you liked or didn't like, and let us know so we can adjust accordingly. And hopefully we can get some new content from myself during this break. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody sticking with us through this season and through the shows. It's been incredible evolution here on Block Digest, and we're going to keep moving forward. So we'll be gone for a couple of weeks, but we'll be back, and hopefully better some new content and some new ways to deliver things. It'll be interesting.
All right, JW, shoot.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Rick said, it's been fun doing the show. It's I don't know how many episodes I've done with you guys now, but it's been a blast. It's cool to have you guys updating me on the news constantly, and I get a lot out of it. So yeah, it's been great. But if you guys can give us some feedback, that would be awesome. Stuff that you like, especially stuff you don't like, or things that you think should change. That's really the valuable stuff. It won't hurt our feelings because we're putting a lot of time into this. So if we're doing something that's kind of lame, it would be great to know. And yeah, I am getting close. So my final thought is I'm getting super close. I've got the domain name mathbot.com. The website's not up yet, but we're still working we're focusing on trying to get the app done, but I should have the first 10 levels done within the next like handful of days. Software development's hard and it's really hard to schedule, but hopefully, let's say within the next handful of days, you guys will be able to play it, check it out, pass some levels. And the idea is to help really kind of replace public schooling and allow kids to learn math and programming in a way that's fun and is all about, getting rewarded rather than kind of forced into it. So yeah, check it out. Keep an eye on my Twitter account for the next update with the first 10 levels.
Looks awesome, man.
Awesome sauce. And Janine, sideloading your thought.
Yeah, so, very hard the last few days to really organize all of the news coming out about how Facebook has been screwing you over the years. But one thing you can do if you want to know what kinds of data Facebook has, you can actually download an archive. Now, if you're smart and you don't have a Facebook page, obviously you don't have to do this. Or if you technically, if you shut it down, Facebook still collected all of your data and they probably still have it, but you won't be able to access it. But if you were smart and never had a Facebook page, you can ignore this advice. If you have a Facebook page or you used to use it, you can log in at any time, go to facebook.com/settings, and you will be able to download an archive of all your data. And well, if you want to know what kinds of data you're going to get, this is a page listing all of the things that they've been collecting from you. So the idea that you had no idea what they were collecting over the years, well, they've been a little transparent about it. It turns out that they may have been accessing text messages for any person that has had the Facebook app installed on their Android phone. Not sure how it affects the iOS operating system, but definitely if you have Android, probably that's what's happening. They basically access all of your text messages, according to one person who downloaded their Facebook data. And this is all of the information they get about you: your address, your other apps you use, your birthday, anything in the Facebook chat. Obviously, they also run WhatsApp. Apparently, people are not real. They're like migrating to WhatsApp thinking, oh, it'll be safe there. It's like, oh, actually, it's run by Facebook. So this is all the data that you could possibly find in the archive when you download it. So, yeah.
I have
lots
the
of
Winklevoss twins crush this kid.
Yeah, so a lot of interesting things. If you want some advice on how to, prevent some of those kind of things from happening, well, first what you need to do is you have to get rid of Facebook and never go back there again. The second thing you need to do is you need to install, these are some really easy things you can do. You install things like Privacy Badger, which for any, Badger don't care people in Bitcoin, that's a good image to go with, Privacy Badger, where the idea is that it eats the cookies that all of these websites may be surreptitiously putting in your computer, and it also allows you to block trackers, so you can do that as well. And if you want to get an ad blocker, I would say you block Origin. All of the other ones are either cooperating with Google or they're just crap in general. So I would say you block Origin. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, Scam. Thought.
Janine, you totally read my mind. I was simply going to say #delete Facebook, #install Mathbot.
Thanks, man. Oh, and read Seyfedian's book, The Bitcoin Standard. It just came out on Kindle.
Nice.
But don't criticize him on Twitter because he definitely does not like that.
Oh, he loves it.
Troll
he
the
loves
living
it.
shit out of him. Seyfedian, eat your carrots. Eat your fucking carrots.
Oh man.
Right.
He enjoys Amir Taki's tears like I enjoy the tears of altcoin scammers.
Alrighty. And my final thought before we disappear for a while might be confusing for the audio listeners, but Illuminati confirmed. See you next time, guys.
Have a great break, everyone.
See you guys.
Peace.